I reported yesterday on his bill that he and Congressman Ro Khanna have represented or put forth, that companies like Amazon and Walmart and Burger King and McDonald's and all these corporations that pay their workers unlivable wages need to be paying for every single dollar their workers get of Medicaid, food stamps, or any other public assistance. Watch this video that Bernie tweeted out earlier. It's really, really something. Here we go.
It became clear that someone had urinated into a Coke bottle because they were afraid to go to the toilet. In late 2015, I set out to write a book about the low-pay economy in Britain, and the first company I worked at, I ended up in an Amazon warehouse. It's no exaggeration to say that it was probably the worst place I've ever worked in. And I'm someone who, when I was younger, did jobs in warehouses. I did manual jobs for many years. The experience at Amazon was one I felt of exploitation. There were rules that were laid down for workers that you couldn't not break. You were being given disciplinaries for going to the toilet. You were given disciplinaries for taking days off sick, even if you provided a doctor's note to say why you were off sick. And you were constantly tracked by management. Your productivity rates became so high that you ended up running around this huge warehouse just trying to keep up with your orders. And at the same time, there was a prohibition on running around the warehouse. You'd receive a disciplinary for that. The atmosphere of the Amazon warehouse I worked in had the atmosphere of what I imagined a prison would feel like. You weren't treated with any respect, with any dignity.
You claim that you found a bottle with urine in it at the warehouse.
One of the consequences of this obsession with productivity and these onerous targets we were given at Amazon was you were afraid to go to the toilet, because if you took 5 minutes to go to the toilet, you were then admonished about it by management when you returned to work. One day when I was working in the warehouse, I was walking down one of the huge aisles and I noticed a Coke bottle of kind of yellow liquid, and my instinctive reaction was, what on earth is that? And then on closer inspection, the lid was off and the smell became apparent. It became clear that someone had urinated into a Coke bottle because they were afraid to go to the toilet. It became very obvious why someone might have done that, because there was an atmosphere of fear around something as basic as going to the toilet. The working conditions at Amazon is accurate. I went in there with an open mind. I didn't know that much about Amazon before I went in there. I didn't go in with any kind of agenda. There was a recent survey done by the group Organize, and they found that 74% of Amazon workers were afraid to go to the toilet because of productivity targets. Now, with that in mind, it doesn't seem a stretch to see that if people are worried about losing their jobs because of productivity targets, they might go so far as to urinate in a bottle if it means losing their job otherwise. Amazon, much of the stuff it's putting out now is pure public relations.
Last week, I asked Amazon workers to share their experiences with my office about ways
My position at Amazon was an order picker. I'd work 10.5 hours a day, and I would walk in that time around 10 miles a day. And it's very tiring work, and within that day, officially you'd have half an hour for a lunch break and then 2 separate 10-minute breaks. But in practice, it would be much less than that, because you're in such a huge warehouse, you have to go through security to get to the canteen. Your half-hour break was realistically 15 to 20 minutes, and your 10-minute break was 5 minutes.
And the issue of working conditions, I'm very proud of our working conditions.
If I was Jeff Bezos, I would be ashamed of the working conditions at Amazon. The stories have gone on for long enough that he can't plead ignorance to what's going on in his warehouses. There are policies which are set, which are coming down from on high.
And I'm very proud of the wages that we pay.
The wealthiest man in the world, the head of the biggest multinational in the world, is effectively saying that he can't afford to pay workers a living wage, and he can't afford to treat workers with the dignity that all workers deserve. The initial response to the work that I did was, first of all, they wanted to meet up for coffee with me, as typically the corporations tend to do when a journalist writes something negative about them. Then it moved on to trying to get me to edit certain things I was writing and paint Amazon in a more favorable light. And then secondly, it was...
I think you get the hang of it. I watched that video, and I was honestly, it really puts a face on what Bernie has been talking about and what others have been talking about. There's been a lot of reports in the last couple months on Amazon. Basically, it's a quasi Hunger Games environment. It's a quasi Hunger Games environment. Key words in that video: they're being tracked. They're being tracked. Their workers. They have to piss. They have to piss into bottles because they don't have the time to go to the bathroom. I mean, of course, this is not comparable to slavery of, America's founding, but these kinds of working conditions are not so far off. These are not workers who have an ability to have any breaks, any real breaks. These are not workers who have an ability to wake up in the morning and actually look forward to going to work. These are not workers who could learn any actual skills to better their future. These are not workers who could do the things you need to do in life to be healthy, like have a full meal for lunch. Take breaks where you're not moving all day at work. If you've ever had back problems, or if you've ever had physical problems, your doctor or your chiropractor or whatever will tell you, make sure you get up from your work desk every 20 minutes to a half hour. Take a walk so you're not stiff. I need to do that. I don't do that often. This is not so far off from indentured servitude. I mean, let's put aside the starvation wages for a second. But look at that video. And that was basically an undercover journalist in the United Kingdom. I mean, these workers are treated like robots. And by the way, it's not so different if you go to a fast food place. You ever go to the drive-thru at McDonald's or Burger King? I've done it way too much. On the road, eating like crap. All these people, you barely see a smile on these workers' faces because they're so stressed. Each one of them is doing the job of 5 or 6 people. And then you want to talk about mental health crises. Then you want to talk about the need for food stamps and Medicaid because they're not getting paid a living wage. They are essentially these workers, let's look at Amazon for a second, are essentially, it's maybe not a physical beating from Jeff Bezos, but it's not so far off from getting beaten down every single day. In the video, walking 10 miles a day in that warehouse, getting 15 minutes to eat lunch, pissing in bottles because you're afraid to go to the bathroom. Progressive endometriosis says, even as a white-collar worker, they make you a servant. And what is this for? This is so, they're all doing this so, we could order, chapstick right to our apartment. So we could order whatever the hell we want right to our home. Well, that's all good and well. It's nice to have the luxury of those kinds of services, but that comes at a cost. I think most Americans do not want products delivered to their home if they saw videos like that. And just like, we applaud Nike for doing a courageous thing and standing with Colin Kaepernick, we shouldn't forget that Nike makes its products on foreign child slaves, basically. Sitting in barely air-conditioned, poor working conditions in factories in far countries to make you your shoes and shirts and hats and whatever. The bottom line is, it's not only about paying criminally low wages. It's about criminal treatment towards other human beings. Let me read you some of the joint op-ed that Bernie Sanders and Congressman Ro Khanna wrote. Headline, "It's time to get billionaires off welfare." Year after year, decade after decade, Republicans in Washington have lectured the American people about the need for welfare reform. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan failed against a fictitious welfare queen driving a Cadillac. Just a few years ago, Republicans turned their attention to a young surfer who used the food stamp program to purchase lobster. But if you listen closely, you will never hear much talk from our Republican colleagues about some of the biggest welfare recipients in America. I'm just going to interject. You don't really hear a lot of talk from Democrats about it either. The billionaire owners of some of the most profitable corporations in our country. Here are just a few examples. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is the wealthiest person on earth, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. He's now worth $168 billion. In fact, since the beginning of this year, his wealth has increased by about $277 million every single day. $277 million every single day. Meanwhile, Bezos continues to pay many thousands of his Amazon employees wages that are so low they must rely on food stamps, Medicaid, or public housing in order to survive. In effect, the middle-class taxpayers of this country are subsidizing the low wages paid by the richest person on earth. That's nuts. But Bezos and Amazon aren't alone. The Walton family have won more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. If that's not an oligarchy, what is? Meanwhile, just like Amazon, Walmart pays its workers wages that are so inadequate, many of them are forced to depend upon public assistance programs at a cost of some $6.2 billion a year to taxpayers in order to survive. The fast food industry is another major recipient of corporate welfare. While the co-owner of Burger King, Jorge Paulo Lemann, has a net worth of about $25 billion, low wages at this fast food chain cost U.S. taxpayers an estimated $356 million a year. And it's not just Burger King. McDonald's workers are actually encouraged to sign up for government assistance, meaning the company fully acknowledges that it pays its employee wages that are non-livable. In total, 52% of fast food workers rely on public assistance programs to make ends meet. Over half rely on public assistance if you're a fast food worker. The wealthy owners of big airliners are also welfare recipients. While American Airlines made nearly $2 billion in net profits last year, its CEO is on track to make $31 million in total compensation this year, 27% of workers at its subsidiary Envoy Air, which is over 16,000 employees, need food stamps and other forms of public assistance because of the inadequate wages they receive. The working families of the middle class of this country should not have to subsidize the wealthiest people in the U.S. That's absurd. That's what a rigged economy is about. The fact is that if employers in this country simply paid workers a living wage, taxpayers would save about $150 billion a year on federal assistance programs, and millions of workers would be able to live in dignity and security. I'll put the link to the story in the video when we put the video up. I also want to point out, if you are marking your calendar, next week is the 10-year anniversary of the global financial crash that you're probably still recovering from. What do you call the $757 million bailout? If that isn't corporate welfare, what is? The banks get corporate welfare too, because when they fuck it up again, and they will fuck it up again, they're already playing with student loans the same way they played with housing mortgages. No media coverage of that, what they're doing with these student loans, packaging it into hot, toxic dog shit. I'm telling you, and I said this yesterday, I'm going to say it again today. Bernie Sanders, this is a winning message if he runs for president again. Because if there's one thing that Bernie Sanders supporters and Donald Trump supporters agree on, is Jeff Bezos shouldn't be making $277 million a year, nor should the Waltons, nor should any of these CEOs. Rust Belt, where Hillary Clinton lost this is a popular message. Republicans were equally against the bailouts of 2008. And all these people going after Bernie now. Well, this is going to mean people aren't, these companies are going to lay people off and aren't going to hire people if they have to pay them a living wage. Good. Let them. They're going to pretty much have no one left. We cannot subsidize Jeff Bezos so he can get 3 extra yachts this week. It is time for all of us to stand up. It's not just greed, it's immoral. There's no human being that needs that much money. But most importantly, if you're a human being and you have any moral compass, you shouldn't want for your success to come at the expense of the vulnerable below you. By the way, the very people that are responsible for your success. Does anyone here think Jeff Bezos is some revolutionary and he does something so special every day that he should make $277 million? Who the hell's making Jeff Bezos that money? The very workers that are peeing in bottles at Amazon. So they don't because they can't go to the bathroom. It's unreal. The greed has got to end. And this is a winning message for Bernie Sanders, whether he runs in 2020 or he doesn't.